In our last video, we started looking at generative expand and started refining our prompts for what we might add to a scene. Let's explore that in a little bit more detail with a different image and explore generative fill capabilities as well as ability to actually remove objects so we can add or remove stuff from our scene. So let's say what I wanted to do was actually add a little farmhouse inside of this scene, and I thought that I'd like to have it situated right around right here. I can make a selection and use the generative fill option that's here. You can also find that under the edit menu here, generative fill. And so once I say generative fill, it will give me a prompt like, what is it that I want to generate? And I could say a farmhouse. And we could see what it does. We'll say generate. Again, once we make a prompt, we might have to sort of revise that based on our vision. I'm thinking I kind of want like an old brick or stone farmhouse, but it's added a couple different versions here, and they work for the environment more or less, but maybe it's not exactly what I wanted. I'll sort of turn those off, and I'm going to make just a brand new selection here. So let's say I said, oh, I really want that farmhouse, and you can draw kind of a loose selection, like I want it to be sort of right here, and then I'll use my generative fill option. And in this time, what I want to generate is going to be a small brick farmhouse. And so we'll see what that does. Little different, more specific prompt, and that might generate results that might be a little bit better for us. It's always sort of fun to anticipate what it's going to produce, and then when it's done, it can like bring over some of these brick farmhouses, and you'll notice it's a little bit more in the shape that I had defined there as well. If that isn't exactly right, I might sort of redefine this again, and I could sort of keep some of my variations over time, but I might turn that off and sort of say, hey, what I actually want, maybe right around here, I could sort of move this to where I want it. I'm going to generate, in this case, a small old stone farmhouse. And so sometimes I've got to add some more specific prompts in order to get the content that we actually envisioned. And that prompt engineering is kind of an art and science in and of itself, how you might phrase your prompts to get more of the content that you were envisioning. And so these were a little bit more what I had in mind, something kind of like that. And if this worked, I could always just regenerate more additions to that. And like these are close, so maybe I'll just go ahead and regenerate with the exact same prompt, and that might give us a few other options that can work for this. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. And so let's say I moved on from there, and what I wanted to do is actually say, I don't really love these sheep either, or I don't like the second one maybe, and I want to get rid of that. You could use generative fill options to get rid of content as well. So what I'll do is I'll turn back to our background. Usually we'll duplicate it, and then I'll make a selection of that. So if I wanted to, I could use my object selection tool, for example, to select that particular object, and then use a generative fill option in order to remove it. So I'm going to say generative fill and then just generate. And what it will do is it will take a look at the entire scene here and basically try to fill that with content that would make sense within that scene. And boom, it's taken that all the way out of there. And we can kind of take a look at the different sort of ways that it's removed that. And we could have different options for what it might look like inside of that removal. So all of them are working pretty well. Please experiment with all of the generative AI tools that are a part of Photoshop. They're really fun to play with, and they sometimes lead you in some really interesting directions. I'm just going to do one other thing is, let's say what I wanted to do is have some birds in the sky. I could always make a selection right there and have some generative fill where I say a flock of birds and see what happens. And of course from there, we might need to refine our prompt to get to dial in to what we truly want to see. And there's some flock of birds, maybe not exactly looking great within the scene, But since it's non-destructive, I could also take that and play around with it. Maybe I want it to be flipped the other direction, and I'll just transform that to flip it so that they're going the other way. It's sort of not, the sky is a little bit awkward once we've done the flip, right? But I could also scale that, and we could refine this sort of down further and further in order to sort of fit into the environment just a little bit better. Okay, I could play all day with this, but I'm sure that you'd rather not watch me playing. You'd want to play yourself. So play around with generative AI.